It's 7 o'clock. This is Sky News Breakfast. These are our top stories this morning. Football's coming Rome. Excitement builds as England prepare for their Euros quarter-final match with Ukraine in Italy tonight.
I will definitely be screaming. I think I'm really gonna be shouting.
And trust me, she can shout.
I mean, we're gonna have to make it up for the fans at home.
The Yorkshire Pirlo. Sky News meets those instrumental in the upbringing of one of England's stars of the tournament so far, Kalvin Phillips.
He's one of the best players I've seen, in this era, who can play that position in a way that he does for club and country.
Also this morning, carry on the cover-up. Leading doctors say measures like mask wearing should remain after the 19th of July to limit the spread of COVID. More than 700 sudden and unexpected deaths are reported in Canada as the country continues to swelter in a record-breaking heat wave. Plus, in the spotlight, English landmarks are to be bathed in blue to mark the 73rd anniversary of the NHS and to thank staff for their pandemic efforts.
Good morning. Heavy and possibly thundery downpours could pop up just about anywhere across the UK and Ireland over the weekend. It will be rather warm and humid as well. I'll bring you all the details later on.
And at 2:45, we'll have a look at the papers with journalists Afia Adom and Thomas Copeland. Good morning. Welcome to Sky News Breakfast. Thank you for joining us. England will try to qualify for their first European Championship semi-final for 25 years when they face Ukraine this evening in Rome. After ending a 55-year wait to beat Germany in a knockout tie earlier this week, Gareth Southgate's England side go to the Italian capital full of confidence. But after playing their first 4 games at Wembley, today's match is England's first away fixture, with COVID travel restrictions meaning fans in the UK have been told not to travel to the game. Our Europe correspondent Michelle Clifford reports now from Rome.
The England players spent a quiet night in Rome, resting up in their hotel ahead of a match which could take them a step closer to becoming European champions. But when they emerge to take on Ukraine today, there will be no stadium rammed with fans to cheer them on. COVID restrictions have prevented thousands travelling from the UK to Italy. But some avid supporters have secured tickets and seats and were able to make the journey from their homes in the European Union. The Bennett family flew in from Cyprus, thrilled at being able to attend this England game, especially because the semi-finals and final will be held in the UK.
I will definitely be screaming. I think I'm really gonna be shouting.
And trust me, she can shout.
I mean, we're gonna have to make it up for the fans at home who can't come, because I think obviously there's not gonna be as many of us. So for the few that are there, we really need to make an impact.
The next 2 semis and final is at Wembley, so at least they've got something to see, and I'm certain England will be there.
In Rome's fan zone, where Italian supporters celebrated their team's victory over Belgium, the number of spectators will be limited for the England game. So too in the stadium, well, there'll be checks on where people have travelled from. England fans, buoyed by the team's defeat of Germany this week, might have been tempted to hot-foot it to Rome, but the warning from the authorities has been don't do it. There wouldn't have been time to complete the mandatory 5-day quarantine before the quarter-final with Ukraine. And the regional health chief had strong words for anyone tempted to break the rules.
I want
to tell the English fans that you must not die for a match. I would invite them to cheer for their team, England, from home, because coming here would be risky, and also it would be impossible to enter the stadium.
Whilst England players admitted they would miss the throng of the crowd in the stadium, manager Gareth Southgate said the team might actually benefit from the match being played in Italy.
I think it's good to come away from Wembley now. It would have been hard to replicate the atmosphere we had the other day, 3 days later, and I think to have a different focus, different surroundings, different sort of a challenge is good for us.
Tens of thousands will be out to support the team, but will be watching from home territory, just hoping tonight's match will lead England to playing their next at Wembley very soon. Michelle Clifford, Sky News, Rome.
Leading doctors are urging the government to keep some measures in place after the full lifting of lockdown restrictions later this month, amid what they describe as an alarming rise in COVID cases. The British Medical Association says sensible, cautious measures will be key to preventing further lockdowns. Let's speak to our correspondent, Charlotte Lomas, who's in the newsroom for us this morning. Morning, Charlotte. What do they want us to keep in place?
Well, Kimberly, it's not time to throw away your face mask just yet. As the British Medical Association said, it would make no sense to get rid of all of those safety measures in their entirety. And actually, when it comes to easing restrictions, it shouldn't be an all or nothing decision. And instead, they are calling for face masks to continue to be worn in public enclosed spaces, such as in shops or on public transport. They're also calling for the message to remain strong that social distancing is the best way to reduce the risk of infection and reduce the risk of getting ill from COVID. And of course, this comes as COVID cases are continuing to rise at an alarming rate. The latest figures from Public Health England show an increase of 46% on last week. And while hospital admissions have remained low, they are also rising now at a pace. And there are twice as many COVID patients in hospital or on ventilators as this time last month. So the leading doctors, the British Medical Association, are saying why throw away all the progress that this country has made over the last 18 months, and it would be sensible to keep some of those safety measures to make sure that COVID cases are kept under control and that we prevent a future lockdown or future spike in cases.
Charlotte, thank you. Well, it comes as the comedian David Walliams and Harry Potter star Jim Broadbent are among a number of familiar faces appearing in a new COVID-19 vaccine promotion.
Get that vaccine! I've had mine. I look fantastic!
With the mouth life is a powerful gift. It's a tingle in your fingers and a tingle in your feet.
The musical-inspired video, released ahead of the NHS's 73rd birthday on Monday, aims to encourage all over 18s to take up the jab. Right, well, let's have a look at the latest COVID data for the UK. There have been 27,125 new cases. 27 more deaths have been reported. That means the total number of people who've died within 28 days of a positive test. That now stands at 128,189. The latest vaccination figures show another 152,525 people have got their first jab, and 193,066 have got their second. In total, over 45 million people have had one dose, 33.22 million are now fully vaccinated. Let's take a look at some of the other stories making the news this morning. And officials in North Miami Beach have evacuated a residential tower block just 5 miles from the site of the Surfside building collapse, in which at least 22 people lost their lives. It comes as officials investigate high-rise buildings across Florida to make sure substantial structural problems aren't being ignored. Hundreds of people are thought to have been killed by a record-breaking heat wave that's sweeping across parts of the US and Western Canada. 719 sudden and unexpected deaths have been reported in British Columbia over the past week, while nearly 100 deaths in Oregon are being investigated as heat-related. Meanwhile, Barbados has been battered by its first hurricane for over 60 years. The island is one of the few holiday destinations on the UK's Green Travel List, and it was the first to be hit by what is called Hurricane Elsa. Residents in Miami are now being told to prepare themselves as the storm heads for US shores. A white police chief in Ohio has resigned after he was caught on CCTV placing an offensive note on the desk of a black officer. The police union representing the black officer filed a harassment complaint against Anthony Campo after footage showed him placing the note saying Ku Klux Klan and a jacket displayed in the KKK style on the desk. Mr. Campo said the incident was intended as a, quote, prank. Landmarks across England will light up blue today to mark the 73rd anniversary of the NHS and to thank staff for their contribution during the coronavirus pandemic. Wembley Arch, Salisbury Cathedral and the Liver Building are among more than 70 sites taking part. And let's have a look at this morning's front pages now. The Daily Mail leads with business bosses, MPs and health experts demanding Boris Johnson reform COVID rules on self-isolation before they, quote, cripple the economy. The Telegraph says Downing Street is refusing to be drawn on whether social distancing rules had been broken following Michael Gove's announcement that his marriage is over. The Eye goes with hopes of quarantine-free foreign trips to Europe for those who've had both doses of a coronavirus vaccine. The Express leads with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel backing down on her plans to make British tourists entering the EU self-isolate. That's after a meeting with Boris Johnson. The Times says fully vaccinated people who've been in contact with someone with COVID will be able to carry on life as normal in a few weeks without the need to take daily tests. The Guardian goes with Labour's win in the Batley and Spen by-election. The party's leader, Sir Keir Starmer, saying Kim Leadbeater won it with her campaign based on unity and decency. The FT says London's share of the European market has steadily risen in recent months, making it Europe's largest share trading centre. England's Euro 2020 clash with Ukraine makes the front of the Mirror, with Captain Harry Kane promising to pull out all the stops to win the match, saying, "We will give it everything." And in the Sun, Paul Gascoigne says England can win the Euros if fans throw all their support behind manager Gareth Southgate. Let's stay with that story right now, because England will try to qualify for their first European Championship semi-final for 25 years when they face Ukraine this evening in Rome. Today's match is England's first away fixture of the tournament, with those COVID travel restrictions meaning that fans in the UK have been told not to travel to the game. But perhaps Brits living in other parts of the EU can help bolster support. I'm joined now by Eleonora and Neil Winrow. They're flying in from Sicily, but you're driving at the moment. Where are you going?
Actually, we've parked up. We are on our way to Palermo Airport. We live in Marsala, which is about an hour's drive away. And then we fly in from Palermo to Rome. So we'll be in Rome about midday.
And the excitement levels, where are they?
Oh, it's incredible. I watched the match on Tuesday night, obviously, and never thought about going to the match until I read the news on Wednesday morning and thought, I've got a chance to go and see England play. It was quite difficult getting my hands on tickets, but fortunately, my oldest son, he put out the jungle drums and actually found someone that knows someone that knows some.
Oh,
and
my gosh.
So I actually got a ticket from someone in Switzerland.
That's fantastic. Are you going to make up for all the fans who can't make it there?
I hope so. We'll try to make as much noise as possible. It's a great honour to actually go and see England play. And this is the first time for me in my years of being a football fan.
It was quite a match to see, isn't it? What does Eleonora think?
Yeah, well, obviously, my wife's Italian, so we had a good match last night as well. So fingers crossed, we'll be able to have an Italian-English final. So we'll be quite partisan in our house.
Fingers crossed. That's going to be high stakes indeed.
It is.
You're going to be travelling on your own, no, to that match?
Probably. Well, obviously, trying to get tickets for Wembley is impossible. So it's just fantastic that we've both had the chance to go to Rome today to see the lads play and hopefully pull off a great win.
Yeah. So you guys live in Sicily, is that correct?
Yes, we live in Marsala, yes.
OK. And are there lots of Brits there?
Very few, in fact, not many at all. In fact, I only know of one other Brit that lives in Marsala, and his name's Neil as well.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
Is the other Neil going to the match?
I haven't been in touch with him for a while, so I doubt it. Don't suppose he'll manage to get any tickets.
It's going to be difficult, isn't it, talking about fan numbers again, because The atmosphere at Wembley was just so fantastic, the last match. I mean, what do you think it's going to be this time around?
Oh, I think it's going to be very difficult to replicate. I mean, I just seen the crowds in other particular stadiums where fans are travelling away from home. It's very difficult to fill the stadiums. But we'll try to make as much noise as possible to make up for the lack of numbers.
Yeah, they'll be counting on you. OK, A, can they do it? B, what's your goal prediction?
OK, well, yes, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to beat Ukraine. You know, so it's less nervous. I'd like to see England get a goal or two in the first half for a change, just to put us at ease a little bit, because it's always nerve-wracking watching England. So it would be nice.
It is. Eleonora?
My wife doesn't speak very much English, unfortunately.
OK. Well, listen, we love your support, Eleonora. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much for chatting to us. Drive safely. Have a fantastic flight.
Thank you.
Our Italian director is saying ciao, arrivederci.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much. Oh, it looks so sunny there, doesn't it? Not so much here. Let's find out what the weather's doing.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Good morning. There will be some warm sunny spells this weekend, but there'll also be plenty of showers, and the showers could strike pretty much anywhere. And it's rather grey this morning across much of England, Wales, Ireland and Northern Ireland. We've got outbreaks of showery rain moving northwards. A brighter start for parts of Scotland, although a few showers possible here as well. And it will feel quite humid and muggy today. Now, the showers could turn quite heavy, slow-moving and thundery, mainly across central and eastern parts of England. Later on, we could also see, though, some pretty nasty downpours across parts of the southwest and some quite heavy ones too for parts of Ireland, so some thundery showers possible. And of course, that does mean we have a risk of localised flooding. Temperatures in the sunnier spells, and actually the very far southeast might escape some of the showers. We're looking at temperatures into the low 20s. Now, the rain moving northwards into parts of Scotland overnight. We'll have more showers to come as we head through the day tomorrow.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Police have been firing tear gas and rubber bullets.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Southeast Asia correspondent in Bangkok.
Our job is to tell the truth.
This is a forgotten front line. They are dying here.
Here it comes. Cut.
Boy, have we got some interesting ways of showing you what's going on.
Their message to us, get ready.
Nothing like apocalypse.
Instructing you to stay at home.
I can't believe we did that.
It's pretty special, isn't it?
The wind was like pulling us out of that little room.
Mandatory evacuation!
I'm Greg Milam, Sky's US correspondent here in Los Angeles. It is almost impossible to predict where these fires will go next. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. This gives you an idea of the strength of those winds, strong enough to bend and twist metal.
Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir.
You need to leave, but you're not understanding.
I've seen the dark side of America. We are standing on the supply line right into the heart of America's opioid crisis. I've seen heartbreaking human stories. Christchurch has been changed forever by what happened here.
Hello, my name is Nadia Frontier.
My name is Ryan Matthews. I'm the Marine Assistant at Rotherham Research Station,
which is to the west of the West Antarctic Peninsula. So far I've been here for 5 months and it is an absolutely wonderful experience.
My name is Fatma Zilzila, the founder of EcoStar from Kuwait, where we face many environmental problems related to waste pollution, deforestation and lack of information. We are collecting recyclables from houses, schools and businesses in order to recycle them. In exchange of your recyclables, you get a tree.
Good morning. There is only one story in town this morning. Yes, you've guessed it, England playing tonight.
This sports bulletin is brought to you by Vitality, committed to getting 100 million people 20% more active by 2025.
The other word that I always remember you referring to in team talks was risk.
You're down 1-0 with 15 minutes to go. What's the point in sitting with your back four, your regular midfield and 2 strikers? What's the point in it? The risk is shove people in the box because the other team react to that. You shove 3 and 4 in the box, get the ball in there. That's the risk because you can lose the breakaway, the counter-attack quite easily. And we lost games that way.
You were offended by... It felt to me like you were offended by the club being beaten by Liverpool or City at any level, and it made you angry. And the build-up to those games, your face was more a little bit like it is now. Was it a dislike of you? Was it the rivalry? What was it that made you feel that way? Because it was just different in the club.
It's my respect to Liverpool. When I was the manager at St Mirren, I went down to Liverpool's training for a week, and I saw the intensity of their training and the consistency they had. So when I came to United, they were winning all the titles. I made that point. And it's like when I was at Aberdeen, there's only 2 clubs you need to beat in Scotland to win everything. That's Rangers and Celtic. At that time when I came to United, there's only 1 club to beat to win the league, and that's Liverpool. So that was my intention. That was what I put everything into producing a team who could beat them. Not necessarily beat them every game, but win the leagues. And I knew that if you beat Liverpool, you're on the right path.
I only recognised this properly when I became captain for that last 4 or 5 years, that you used to stand outside the dressing room door and the captain couldn't go out past you until you were there. Every single match. You make sure you... Why did it's this influence over referees, this looking down the corridor, it's the looking at the away team. What was the reason you stood outside that door so that everybody could see you? Was it for your own team or was it for the others down the corridor?
No, for the own team. Okay. My own team. But there was one occasion, I don't know if you remember this, but we were down 3-0 to Tottenham, at Tottenham. And I never said a word in the dressing room. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I sat in the radiator and it was bloody burning hot too. And I says...
I do remember actually now.
Next goal's the winner. That's what I said. And I went to the door and Teddy Sheringham, who played with us, of course, was their captain. And he came out to the door and looked at me and turned and said to his players, don't let them score early. We scored in the first minute. Remember that?
Yeah.
I thought that killed him with Teddy having to say that to them. Because I looked at him, and they looked at me. And I just, come on, we can win this. It's a funny game.
At the age of 6, I had meningitis, septicemia, and they said I'd never walk again. My Achilles in my left leg shrunk, so that meant that sort of my knees weren't in line with my hips, so they said that I'd constantly have problems with that. A year and a half later, I started going outside. I was back walking, running, and then I got signed for QPR, age 8. So, yeah, it's a miracle really that I was being able to walk and run again.
How did you go from, struggling to walk to being able to run around and be able to play with the kids? But the kids were really good at football.
Both my legs were in plaster for about 6 months. I was in a wheelchair. I can't remember exactly how I started walking again, but I used to have to wear like night splints, so my legs were constantly in splints to help me walk. Mentally, when I come out of hospital, I was like a different child. My mum said it wasn't the same child that went into hospital. I had brain damage from it, and I was on life support for 6 days. I've got obviously ADHD, I was diagnosed, OCD, personality disorder. I've got a few things. So that, as well as sort of playing football, was a massive sort of risk. I was lonely. I felt like at a very lonely place with this injury now. Beforehand, I was constantly on a high. I always thought I will get through whatever I go through, and that's
Committed to getting 100 million people 20% more active by 2025.
Coming up on Sky News Breakfast, we'll have a special report from the front line of the US-Mexico border crisis. Well, the England squad have arrived in Rome ahead of their quarter-final match-up with Ukraine, and their sights are firmly fixed on making the Final Four in the tournament. Euro 2020 has showcased some of the greatest footballing talents in the world, but one young Yorkshireman has also left quite the impression. Tom Parmenter has been in Leeds to find out more about one of England's players of the tournament so far.
Back in the winter, a mural popped up in the middle of Leeds. It saluted Kalvin Phillips, a son of this city who they knew was a bit special. Now Phillips has played every minute of England's tournament so far and has proved that he is the business.
Kalvin grew up over there. He just over that side of the housing estate there.
And the high school's over that way?
Yes, that's where he went to Farnley Academy.
And then his mum's where?
Mum lives over there. So it's quite a good circle, really close circle, which is, like I say, he still lives around here, so he's still in his area, which is brilliant for us.
Paul and Ian used to drop him off back home after training at Wortley Football Club in the west of Leeds. To see their Kalvin now running England's midfield is a bit special.
Even when it was cold or it was snowing, he'd just come off and smile. Even if we lost, drawn or win, he'd just smile all the time. And it was a pleasure to coach, really well.
In the game against Croatia, was it, when he knocked the ball through for Sterling to score? We've seen him do that loads of times. It's the same little run, the same run as if you're not having this ball off me, and then he pushes it through gap. And we've seen him do it here, haven't we? He's done it before for us.
The man on Kalvin Phillips' shoulder in the mural is South African defender Lucas Radibi. He was known as the chief in the famous Leeds United side of the 90s.
He's one of the best players I've seen, in this era, who can play that position in a way that he does for club and country. A great platform, to showcase and represent, a holistic picture of what it means to be a professional footballer, from the streets in the community, to the helm, of the best in playing against the best in the world.
He has been nicknamed the Yorkshire Pirlo after the Italian great Andrea Pirlo. But Kalvin Phillips is now his own man, on loan to England, but at home just here. Tom Parmenter, Sky News, Leeds.
A humanitarian crisis is rearing its head once again in the US as migration across the Mexican border reaches its highest level for 2 decades. Now, along the border, those migrating from Mexico to the US have many points to cross. Since January, when President Joe Biden came into office, it's estimated over 50,000 unaccompanied children have made the journey. In May, US Customs and Border Protection said it detained more than 180,000 people. That's in May alone. Now, the Rio Grande, spanning across the state of Texas, is a popular crossing point due to its variation in levels. Between 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, the river flow drops significantly, allowing the dangerous journey to be much less treacherous. The cities of Acuña and Piedras Negras are some of the most popular places for that final push to US soil. From there, our chief correspondent Stuart Ramsey sent this report.
Carrying pretty much everything he owns, he stops at an island in the middle of the Rio Grande, the border between Mexico and the United States. He turns back to his wife and baby, nervously negotiating the rocky riverbed. Swinging his child onto his shoulders and holding his wife's hand, they make their way. They're from Haiti. It's probably taken weeks or months to get here. Now finally, they're steps away from America. They know they'll be detained and they'll claim asylum. But these final steps could be the start of a new life. And to them, any legal issues are worth the risk. In just a couple of days, we've watched dozens cross like this. They wait for the river flow to drop, and in broad daylight they cross. Mainly their families. The United States border patrols on and off the river are constant. Armed officers riding airboats scan the banks looking for migrants attempting to cross. But in the days we've been here, we didn't see them intercept anyone. Mainly, we watched as they searched with helicopter support hovering overhead. In truth, they just can't stop the crossings happening. We came across 2 families on the riverbank preparing to cross, Haitians once again. They've been in Mexico for 3 months, but have decided to make their move. Their story is always the same. Haiti is impossible to live in.
Uno coge un camino sí difícil para buscar una mejor vida, pero pensé que de ahí uno puede entender eso.
And what are you hoping will happen when you get to America?
Ça, c'est objectif là. Ese es el objetivo. Ese es el objetivo.
Después nosotros llegar a Estados Unidos, nosotros creo la vida puede continuar más fácil y nosotros podemos recuperar de nuestra familia, porque allá la cosa está muy terrible.
This group and unaccompanied minors from anywhere are pretty much guaranteed to enter the migration processing system. Others are usually just kicked back. But that said, tens of thousands, just like these people, are trying to get in every single month. But it's easy to see where the migrants gather before they cross the United States. Everywhere's full of rubbish. There's also paperwork on what to do when you get to America. Interestingly, there's also abandoned ID cards that are here. Worth remembering, too, that it's not just men going across, it's families as well. We have a pile of unused nappies here and a colouring book for children, and that's really important because since January this year, 50,000 unaccompanied minors have attempted to make this really quite dangerous crossing. Fernando Hernandez is from Honduras. He is just 16 years old. He's travelled 2,000 miles by bus to get here. He's doing this, he says, for his family. Why did you leave, Fernando?
¿Y por qué fue que te saliste de Honduras?
No, en realidad pues yo me salí porque quería buscar, experimentar algo nuevo, pues a ver si ganaba algo de dinero para mantener a mi familia.
He left us to attempt the crossing, but turned back. He can't swim. 2,000 miles, but 50 metres short, for now. The draw of the United States and the lengths people are prepared to go to get here, both legal and illegal, is staggering. They're breaking records right now, but in reality, no administration has ever found a way to stop it, and possibly never will. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, on the Rio Grande in Mexico.
Good news ahead for UK holidaymakers this summer, as a large cruise liner is coming back for the first time in 6 years. Royal Caribbean's Anthem of the Seas is returning to Southampton to take guests on a cruise around the British Isles. But what will post-pandemic cruising actually look like? The Royal Caribbean's Vice President Ben Bolden joins us now. Good morning, Ben. Thanks a lot for joining us. What has demand been like for this cruise?
Good morning. I'm delighted to say that demand's been fantastic. Royal Caribbean Group started sailing in November in markets like Singapore, and we've had an unprecedented number of guests there sailing with us, and we've seen that demand translate across to the UK market. So we're really excited ahead of this summer's domestic programme.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are excited about this, Ben, but at the beginning of the pandemic, cruise ships and the disaster stories, the horror stories that we were hearing coming out of there, how exactly are you going to make your cruise ships COVID safe?
Well, we've been out of service ever since we voluntarily suspended operations in March of last year. So we've been out of service for 15 months now, and we've pulled together a panel of leading epidemiologists and experts around the world to spend real time focused on our protocols for when we return. And we're ready to return. We've got a very, very coherent, multi-layered approach to the protocols that we're applying. And that starts with testing rigorously before cruising, a requirement for our guests to be vaccinated over the age of 18, and multiple other protocols across the course of the sailing, including starting our programs with a reduced capacity to enable social distancing. And of course, we will be mask wearing initially, as per Life Here Today.
What happens if people test positive when they're on that cruise? I'm assuming that there's going to be testing throughout the actual cruise.
Well, we test before people cruise. The cruises are relatively short, so we won't be testing throughout the cruise, but we test everybody who's vaccinated pre-cruise, and we also test everybody, i.e. children under the age of 18, at the terminal before they board the ship.
Ben,
so we're very confident that people
sorry to jump in there, Ben. Are they going to be jumping on and off?
No, our first cruises are not going, our cruises are just going out to sea. We will, as we move forward into the next few weeks, start to visit multiple locations around the UK. But this is a domestic programme initially. And of course, when people do go out, we'll be going in a curated shore excursion. So we'll be keeping
so they
our
are
guests
going onto the shore. Sorry, Ben. So they are actually going onto the shore.
Yes, they will be, yes.
So are you going to test them when they come back?
No, because they're essentially, take an example, one of our cruises will be going to Liverpool, when we go to Liverpool, we won't be testing people as they get off the ship or as they get back on the ship, because they're not leaving the UK. We're testing them when they arrive with us, and we believe that's proficient for the situation here. As things evolve and we start to go internationally, it's very different.
Yeah, you know, from the moment you take, are you requiring PCR tests when they get on board? They have to take a PCR test.
Yeah, so every one of our vaccinated adult guests will have had a PCR test within 72 hours of boarding the ship.
So then the problem is that if you take that PCR test and you catch COVID between the test and the time you get on the ship, and then you get on the ship and you're asymptomatic, you know, on the Diamond Princess, they think that up to 75% of the passengers were asymptomatic. If you're not testing while people are on board, you could have a huge breakout, couldn't you? Especially if you have a super spreader on board.
Well, I think the situation very much depends on the length of the sailing and where you're going, where you're sailing from. So on longer sailings, which we aren't doing at the moment from Southampton, but we will be doing elsewhere in the world, we do have testing during the cruise. And also we have testing before people debark the cruise, because that facilitates them then being able to fly home safely. So it very much depends on where we're cruising. For the UK market, we are taking solely UK passengers who we have tested before cruising. They're not leaving the UK, and hence the protocols are slightly adjusted, and they are in line with Public Health England's requirements.
OK, Ben, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
Right, time now for a look at the weather.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Good morning. Heavy and thundery showers are possible just about everywhere this weekend, but showers are very hit and miss, so some places may prove luckier than others. It's a rather grey start across much of England, Wales, parts of Ireland as well, with overnight showers still continuing, and they'll push northwards through the day with some rumbles of thunder as well. Not looking too bad a start for parts of Scotland, but here we'll see the showers moving in later on. Now, I mentioned some of them could be heavy and thundery, especially across central and eastern parts of England, also down towards the southwest, so potentially some localised flooding. It is rather warm and humid, temperatures into the low 20s, and there will be some sunny spells.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
7:43 now. Coming up on Sky News Breakfast, we're going to be looking at the papers with the journalists Afia Adam and Thomas Copeland. See you then.
At the start of this, we reckoned that you needed somewhere around 65-70% of the population, the whole population, to be immune in order to have that herd immunity which prevents the virus spreading. Now, since then, we've got these rather more transmissible variants, particularly the Delta. So maybe that figure's gone up to around 70% because it has a bigger R number, R0 number. And, you know, therefore, we have to think about vaccinating the kids. Because 80% of the adult population, if that only represents 50% of the whole population, we're still too low to prevent the virus spreading, and it will spread in kids. So I'm in favor, if we can and when we can, of vaccinating children as well, so that the whole population is immune to the point where the virus can no longer circulate. COVID will be with us for quite a long time. We've got to get used to it. We do have outbreaks, of course, of other virus infections in the winter, flu notably, but also what we call rhinoviruses, common cold, respiratory syncytial virus. They come round every winter, and perhaps COVID will be the same. It's worth observing, however, that the serious pandemics of the 20th century, 1918, 57, 68, etc., which were, in fact, all flu, in the first wave, the first year, those viruses, those pandemics were quite severe with a lot of deaths. As they went on, although those same viruses with changes continued to circulate, they became attenuated. They were less virulent in the population, and cause less deaths. And it may be that when we're vaccinated and we've seen COVID before, if we do get infected in the future, it may well be that it's significantly more mild than it has been on this first wave of infections in the human population.
An enormous explosion has just come down. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
You either live and recover, or you die.
Dan usaha saya menggarap lahan hutan. Did you know symptoms of hay fever can develop at any stage of life, not just in childhood? The Pollen Reports, sponsored by Philips Connected Air Purifiers.
It's a rather mild start this morning and a fairly grey one with some outbreaks of rain, some heavy showers and thunderstorms moving northwards across the country today. Could be a risk of localised flooding for parts of central and eastern England and also the southwest of England. Some heavy showers to watch out for. Now, rain and showers will reduce the risk of pollen to low at times, but we are in peak grass pollen season at the moment, and for many levels are looking high to very high across the country during any warm, sunny spells.
The Pollen Reports, sponsored by Philips Connected Air Purifiers.
Time for another look at the papers, and with us again are journalists Afia Adam and Thomas Copeland. Hello again to you both. Thanks a lot for being here this morning. Let's kick off with the Eye and you, Afia. Michael Gove and his wife are separating. What are they saying?
Yes, they are. That's not the story I was going to talk about, but why not?
You tell us what you're going to talk about. I'm sorry.
Yes, I was going to talk about the school closures causing children considerable harm. So this was actually a study that's been done by University College London. And it says that up to 60% of boys and 47% of girls are experiencing anxiety. Now, this study was done in February during the third lockdown. And it really gives us an insight into the effects that the lockdown has had on our children, not just on their education, but on their physical and mental well-being as well. It discovered that children who were out of the classroom suffered considerable impact. And we know that there was a huge percentage of children out of the classroom. Lots of children did end up going to school because they were children of key workers, so they were in school. But kids who've been who have been out of school are at risk from depression and anxiety. And it found that 53% of girls and 44% of boys aged 13 to 18 had the symptoms of anxiety. Now, when we're talking about recovering our children from what has been an extremely tough time for them, I have a 9-year-old daughter, so I've seen firsthand how difficult she's found it being out of school. And when we talk about getting our children back in school, there's been lots of talk about perhaps extending the school day so they can catch up on things like maths and English. And we know that children up and down the country are deemed to be falling behind. But I think what this study shows is actually how important it is for us to be working on our children's physical and mental health. If you've got such high numbers of 13 to 18-year-olds, boys and girls experiencing anxiety, I think that's something that we really have to focus on as well, well as catching them up in other areas.
Yeah, Afia, so true. Let's go to the front of The Guardian now. Thomas, what has Keir Starmer been saying?
Well, if you buy The Guardian, I'm sure you'll find out he's writing for The Guardian today on Thursday's narrow by-election victory in Batley in Spain. He's hailing it as a victory, as a turning point for Labour. He talks there a lot about the decency. That's the headline of his candidate, Kim Ledbetter, sister of Joe Cox, who had to fight a tough and at times fairly nasty campaign and with a lot of media attention, as is usually the case for by-elections. Now, in the end, it's kind of hard to say what this really means for Labour. This was a very narrow victory, 323 votes in a seat that Labour have had since the early 80s, I think 1983, and they normally win with, you know, a 5,000, 6,000 average majority. So, you know, these overall trends are still in place. The Tories are gaining ground in areas like Batley and Spain. Labour are finding it more difficult to cling on. So, you know, Labour still has to grapple with these kind of existential challenges. There are two positives, though, I think that Keir Starmer could take away. The first is that 323 votes isn't a lot. It's probably likely that is the kind of the Hancock effect. So a number of people, I mean, 323, but that's a block, a couple of streets, just people who are put off by the Matt Hancock story. What they seem to perhaps see was a sense of hypocrisy, a sense of entitlement. Is there a narrative in there, the kind of born to rule, one rule for them sense that Keir Starmer could cling on to and start to build, perhaps? The other thing is that, you know, politics is about perspectives. We all know this. It was a narrow election victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. And changing this sense of Labour decline and trying to inject a sense of optimism, a sense of momentum, that could be key for Keir Starmer. It could be the first of a very long journey, undoubtedly, but trying to build from here is going to be something that he's going to be very keen to do. You know, the final thing, I suppose, is what's clear is Keir Starmer will have slept easy in bed knowing that if he'd lost this campaign in Batley and Spain, it's probably almost certain that he would have been challenged for the leadership. There have been stories abounding of Don Butler, Angela Rayner, even Andy Burnham raising a few eyebrows with some of his comments recently. But, you know, he kept the seat very narrow, so he's safe in the leadership for now, but a long, long way to go.
A breather for Labour. And we're actually going to be talking to the Shadow Home Secretary, Nick Thomas-Symonds, in the next hour. Let's go to the Sun, Afia. Gaza backs Gaffer.
Yes, so Paul Gascoigne has been talking to The Sun ahead of the huge England match tonight in Rome against Ukraine. And he is saying that, look, Gareth Southgate can take England all the way. He's saying he's the answer to everything for us, and we need to believe in him. So we know that Gaza and Gareth Southgate have played together for 4 years. They were in the 1996 tournament together, where England actually went out to Germany. So Gaza is telling us to trust in Gareth Southgate. And, you know, I think Gareth Southgate really has come through as the manager that England have needed for a long time, you know, and he's expressed his views to the fans on taking the knee, on so many other things. It was a really interesting essay that he actually penned on about Britishness, about the team. And I think that's really good that he's done that to reach out to the fans. We hope that can translate to the team. We hope that they're not going to miss, you know, the 12th man, the roar of the fans when they do play in that stadium in Rome. And we hope that they can go all the way. You know, I'm Scottish, you can tell by my accent. So Scotland was actually my team. Unfortunately, you know, we didn't do so well. So I'm rooting for England now.
Oh, well, that's good. We're all English today. Right. Thomas, are you going to be watching the match?
Well, I'm an unfortunate combination of not English and don't care about football. So I'm not sure if that's a criminal offence now, but I'm afraid I won't really. I mean, I suppose I hope England do well in the broader sense, but I can tell you that I'll be sleeping in my bed just fine no matter what happens. Sorry, that comes across as really bad. I hope England win. Yeah, obviously.
Okay, okay. Listen, let's go to the Express now. I'm looking out the window. It's pouring with rain, but there's a heat wave on the way, the Express is saying, Thomas.
Yeah, as always, the Express is reporting that there's a heat wave on the way, as indeed there is always the coldest summer on record. There is going to be the hottest summer on record. Apparently, they say that the weather maps to suggest that a Spanish plume is on the way, whatever that means, 28 degrees, basking in sunshine. I mean, if we're serious for half a second, I suppose it's good news from the sense of people have been cooped up for many months now. It'd be good to get outside, enjoy some sunshine. Also, you know, it's nice to be outside, sitting outside in hospitality. I've loved some of the new expanded outdoor seating areas that we've got in hospitality. I hope they stay with us. I fear as British weather sets in, come the autumn and winter, they won't. But good news from that perspective. And sure, sunshine's good for everyone. We'll keep our fingers crossed for a balmy summer.
Yes, 28 degrees C, they say, right?
Yeah, something like that. I think 83 Fahrenheit, whatever that means. Yeah. I think 28 degrees Celsius is too hot for me.
Too hot for you. Okay, well, you can be inside not watching the football.
An ideal combination.
An ideal combination. OK, Afia and Thomas, thanks a lot. We'll see you next hour. Lots more still to come here on Breakfast. Obviously, lots more about that match. We'll be back in a moment.